Welcome back, everyone, to Author Story. I'm your host, Alexander Lim, and our featured book for this episode is Stutterer Interrupted, The Comedian Who Almost Didn't Happen, which you can check out by clicking on the Amazon link in the video description below. And the author is Nina G, who does stand-up comedy, who also tours the United States as a keynote speaker at conferences. So, Nina, welcome to Author Story. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, Nina, first off, the basics. We all know that children stutter when they start talking and exploring how to speak. So, when did you or your parents realize that this is a permanent rather than a temporary condition?
So I started to stutter when I was 8,
Okay.
and previously to that, I was in speech therapy for articulation issues. So I was told as a kid that I sound like I am from New York, and I was like, oh, well, yeah, I just moved to New York instead of being in speech therapy. I was like 7 at the time.
Okay.
And when I was around 7 or 8, that's when that started to kind of be addressed. And then I started to stutter. And that was also about the time I was diagnosed with dyslexia, which is a reading, writing, and language processing disability.
Right.
And so the stutter, like, you don't know if it's going to stick or not until you're in your adolescence.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And so sometimes people, so 3% of the 3 to 4% of the kid population stutters, and 1% of the adult. So some people spontaneously recover, just something happens in their brain and it clicks. And for others, we may be lifelong stutterers. So whatever happens, happens.
All right. Right. Okay. So, this is stuttering. Come on. This is the kind of thing that, when you're a kid, other kids are going to pick on you for this. While you're growing up, what sort of things affected you because of your stuttering?
Kids are going to make fun of me, but also I had people who stuck up for me too. So, and there is a story in my book about that. But for me, the thing that was most upsetting to me as a kid was how adults treated me, and specifically my teachers. And I went to Catholic school in the 1980s, and what I always tell people is never pity me for having dyslexia or for stuttering, but you can't pity me for going to Catholic school in the 1980s, because it wasn't a fun thing. And so for me, the ways that teachers treated me, once I did this excellent presentation with a girlfriend of mine in the 8th grade, she got a straight A. I got an A-, and the teacher said it was because my speech was unclear. And it was like, bitch, don't you know that I stutter? Why you do that to a 13-year-old kid other than you're just not very nice? So
yeah, and I think this is a Catholic school, so the teachers would be taught, would be considerate. They'd be working in the realm of love and compassion, but this ain't the case, is it?
No, especially in the 1980s, where it was very much like a lot of. Now I've seen some really great Catholic schools, but I still think there needs to be a lot of work done. But yeah, no, I never understood that, because I don't know if they say this everywhere, but there's a saying in the US, which is, what would Jesus do? And then you do the thing that Jesus would do. And I always say, I'm pretty sure that Jesus would accommodate a kid with a disability. And not all Catholic schools get that. So
right, okay. And I'm a little surprised, maybe maybe not so, but to learn that some of your peers actually supported you, with your condition.
yeah, and there's a story that I tell where I stuttered in front of the entire school, and then in like, in the 7th grade, and I thought my life was over. This is the worst thing ever. And I was at recess, and I was talking to this 8th grade boy, and another little kid walked up to us. He was in 3rd grade, and he started doing the old "Hey na 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 Nina" thing,
Right.
and that's when the 8th grade boy gently knelt down to look the little boy in the eye and said, "If you ever tell Nina that again, I'm going to tell everybody your penis is this big." And he indicated very teeny tiny. And I was like, oh, I have a crush on this guy for the rest of the year. This is the nicest thing anyone's ever done. And so it was it was a good experience to be able to stutter in front of the school and it be a positive thing. Like, I thought it was the worst, most embarrassing thing at the time, but really, it ended up to be really good.
Nice. Okay. So I'd like to move on to growing up, adulthood. I read that becoming a comedian was a dream of yours, and given that you stutter, I'm sure that would have seemed like kind of unreachable.
Yeah, no, completely. And that's
Uh-huh.
why when I was 11, that's when that dream kind of came.
Uh-huh.
And I used to write jokes, and I used to call up open mics when I was a teenager. And when I was about 16, 17, the dream died. And it died because I'm a person who stutters, and I never saw anybody like that, especially in the 1980s and 90s, who who had stuttered openly and did stand-up comedy. And so the dream was like, I can't do it, so I'll move on into other things. But then when I was 35, I attended a conference for people who stutter, and I just realized how much I was holding myself back in multiple ways. And then when I came back from that, I started to make changes in my life. And when I was 36, about 6 months after that conference, I started doing stand-up comedy. And this coming March will be 10 years.
Wow. Nice. Okay, so 10 years into a dream that you never thought was would have been possible.
No, exactly. And like the things that it's brought me, like, I get to now do colleges and conferences, and now with the book, like, it's given me a voice that I really did not have before I started doing comedy, because it's a more authentic voice to myself, because I do come from I do come from academia, and I thought that, maybe I'll write in academic language, and that will drive me to do keynoting and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And that academic voice is not my voice. I need to say the F word a lot. and
Okay, okay,
and
okay.
and I'm not here. You can thank me for that. But I need to express myself in the ways that are more authentic to me, but the message is still the same, which is equality, which is just shut up and we'll get the word out, and to help have a greater understanding of what it's like for people who stutter or who have disabilities.
Right, right. Okay. So I'm sure you had to go through quite a few things to get to where you are, but you know, what was it like, standing on stage and presenting your first ever comedy act to the public?
It was surreal and weird. And, for me, the issue of stuttering wasn't there, because it was just like, I know what's going to happen. It's
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
just there. It was more that I was embarrassed that I was putting myself out there to say that I am funny. It felt vain to me. It felt like I was entering a beauty contest and saying, "Look, everyone, I'm so pretty." But instead it was, "Look, everyone, I'm so funny." And it felt very strange to me to have that shift. And I didn't tell people in my life that I was doing this for a while. My parents knew, in part because I was taking a class at the San Francisco Comedy College, and I needed their money to do that. But other than that, not a lot of people knew.
Okay, okay. So now that you're a comedian, I mean, I'm sure you've got sort of like a methodology going on. What sort of what sort of topics, what sort of methods do you use when when you're doing stand-up comedy?
Whatever is bothering me or sticks in my craw, kind of thing, like whatever um, is pissing me off, basically,
Right. Okay.
it,
Okay.
it is what gets me through that threshold.
Uh-huh.
and and also like having a funny take on things. Like yesterday, was it yesterday? 2 days ago, I was out with my girlfriend, my friend. I'm married. When I say girlfriend, I mean friend. Um,
Okay.
Heather, who, like, we saw a rat just kind of scampering at like noontime,
Uh-huh.
and, and this was in downtown Berkeley. Like, this was
Hmm.
like this rat should have been more scared than it
Okay.
was. It was like the most the rat looked like it just got a massage or something. Like, it was just like this, like, and like to me that was interesting.
Hmm.
And there's something there with that rat. Might I turn that into a joke? I don't know. I'll try it
Hmm.
at some open mics. I don't really think there's much there I can do with it, but it was a hilarious image.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Cool. Okay. So I'm now that you're a comedian, I just like to do sort of like a before and after kind of thing. Ask you for a before and after kind of thing. How did people tend to treat you before you became a comedian compared to after you became a comedian?
um so that is such a good question. So after, okay, so sometimes people treat comedians like they can say anything to them.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
like, I don't know why they think they can do this, but
Hmm.
like I'll get very strange comments. And I think this is why my book has such a unique take, because I've had people tell me that certain sex acts will cure my stuttering. I never had
Ah.
that before. Like, when you put yourself out there like that, you get some interesting things back. And
Hmm.
so there is that part. Then there's the other part of like, "Oh, tell me a joke, tell me a joke, be funny right now, be funny right
Ah.
now." It's like,
Right. Right.
well, like, I'm not asking you to do your job right now,
Right.
so
Right.
chill out. And so there's always those things that most comics have, in that they react to. I think also being a comedian who stutters, people are always like, "Hey, you just said 3 words. You didn't stutter on those words." And I'm all
Hmm.
like, "Oh my God, am I being like evaluated if I stutter or not?" And
Right.
so there's another element there for me as well.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Cool. So I just like to talk a little bit. I mean, I don't know if you've done an investigation into your condition, but I just like to talk a little bit about it. What is stuttering anyway? What causes it? What's the biological basis of it? If you know about what causes it.
Yeah. Okay. So what stuttering is prolongations, repetitions in blocks, and you've probably gotten a little bit of each of those throughout this interview.
Right.
I have a mild to moderate stutter
Hmm.
right now. It's fairly moderate, I think. But some days it's a little more moderate than it's mild. So every day it fluctuates. And in kids, what the research says is that 60% of kids who stutter have a relative who also stutters. So there is a genetic link there.
Okay.
It is not caused by any kind of trauma. It's not caused by lack of intelligence. You know, like these are the stereotypes that people have, and these are and these are the ones that I'm trying to change because those are so not accurate. Right. But instead, what it is there is a difference in the brain. And that difference in the brain is that in the left side of the brain near Broca's area, and Broca's area is the part of the brain that is the expressive part of the brain, so where you speak from. We have a difference near that area that results in a stutter. But if we sing, or if we use a funny voice, or we use lots of intonation, then those are functions of the right side. And that is why people can stutter very severely at times, and then sing and be totally fluent, because that is a function of the right side. And the example that I always like to use there is that Marilyn Monroe was a person who stuttered, and that's why she talked like this. Because if you talk like this, you can trick your brain into speaking from the right side instead of the left side. And she didn't know any of that biology, of course, because nobody knew. But she figured it out, and she bypassed it.
Okay, nice. Interesting. And of course, stuttering is I don't want to use this term, but it is a lifelong condition, right? I mean, and there's no cure. I mean, especially particular sex acts, not going to cure this thing.
Yeah, there's no research on that. And also, I mean, some people do certain things that will help them, and but there is no cure. And so different people use different speech tools. And for myself, I have decided many years ago that I just stutter. This is how I talk. Some people have an accent. Some people, have a difference in their speech. And for me, this is mine. We talk and communicate in various ways. It's all of those ways are valid. And I think that our world needs to accept and be flexible within those boundaries of what we consider speech. So some people do, though, want to use speech tools, and I think whatever people choose should be their right, and it shouldn't be forced on them by others.
Right. Okay. So I'd also like to ask Nina, I mean, for those of us who live, quote, physically perfect lives, unquote, okay, what's the most...
It's not for long.
Right, okay.
It isn't going to be for long, so let's just get that out.
Okay. So anyway, what's the most frustrating thing that stutters, or maybe even people with other disabilities, face when it comes to dealing with people who are, quote, normal, unquote?
I think that there is a concept that is talked about often across race, across gender, across sexual orientation, and disabilities in there too. And the term is microaggressions. And these are the everyday things that happen. Oftentimes it's very unintentional, but they're little slights on the person that result in being really annoyed to like really giving you stress in your life. And it's something that we have to think about a little too much. And for me, as a person who stutters, some of those microaggressions are when somebody interrupts me. And I come from an Italian American background. Like, we interrupt each other. That's just an Italian thing to do.
Okay.
But it's more when I'm trying to get out my name and people start to guess what my name is, or they say, "Oh, did you forget your name?" or just like some kind of comment. Like, not everything has to be commented on. And my speech doesn't need to be called attention to all the time. It can just be there. And it's those little weird situations that come from people who don't stutter is, to me, one of the larger issues.
Right, okay, all right, got that, okay. So, Nina, I'd like to talk a little bit about the book. I'm sure you've done pretty well as a comedian. So why write a book? I mean, why do so?
Uh, you know, I'd been wanting to write a book before I was a comedian, just to connect stories in my life to lessons that I want to teach people who don't have disabilities. So the book had been on my brain for a very long time, but having the comedic voice gave me access to communicate that a bit more. So I was very excited about that. Plus, I am a professional speaker, and a book helps to drive that, and it helps to drive, it's like your calling card and things like that. So I wanted to get better gigs, and this will also help me with that. So.
And I mean, you did speak on TEDx, right? I mean, that's a pretty good gig.
Yeah, no, that was a great gig, and I have been very lucky to also be featured on understood.org, which is a website on dyslexia. I've been able to get on the news and things like that because of my comedy. So I am very appreciative of this opportunity that the book gives to be featured on TV and in print, because hopefully that will also convert into people knowing who I am, so that I can go to colleges and speak to people, especially not in October, because October in the US is Disability Awareness Month, and I get a lot of gigs that month. And in February, not so much, or in March, not so much. So, yeah, hoping that will help to drive that as well.
All right, okay. And this drive to make you speak about stuttering disabilities and these sorts of things, did this come before you became a comedian, or did being a comedian open up the venue for you?
Yeah, that is exactly it. Is that this was something that I always did. I just didn't have the venue to do it as much as I wanted to. And like, in being a comedian, it's weird because I do it to people in dive bars on a Friday night at like midnight, and who else gets to have that opportunity to help to educate people like that? And so that is an interesting process, but then also carrying that into speaking engagements in a more formalized way.
Okay, got it. Okay. So Nina, let me pose this question to you, okay? Let me say you came across a child, an adolescent, or even the parent of an adolescent who has been given the diagnosis, highly accurate diagnosis, that they will be a lifelong stutterer, like OMG. And you had only time to tell that child or that parent one thing about, stuttering and their condition. What would be that one thing you would tell them?
I would say, let's get you to a conference for people who stutter, because finding a community is the most important thing. Because in a community, you will see what you will grow up into, you will see your possibilities, you will see your communication style reflected in terms of what you want to be and who you are now, and every single possibility. And for me, my community of people who stutter has been the thing that has changed everything. And especially if this was a adolescent girl who stutters, that there are less of them than the boys. And so I really would want them to meet other women who stutter, because we need to have that, and we need to know that we have a valued way of talking, because society doesn't always convey that.
Okay. I'm just curious, how many females compared to males stutter?
It is 4 to 1.
4 males to 1 female.
Yes. Or
Okay.
if it's 4 people, one's going to be a woman, 3 are going to be men.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, got yeah, there are so there yeah, there will be a lot fewer women, a lot fewer girls then. Okay, okay, I got that. I got that. Okay.
And that is why I call us unicorns, because when I was a kid, I really wanted to find another girl who stuttered so that we could be best friends.
All right.
And that never happened. It never ever happened. But now that I'm an adult, I have a lot of unicorns in my life, and I feel very fortunate to have that.
All right, great. Fantastic. Cool. Okay. So, Nina, the last minute or so of this interview, are there any last words of wisdom you'd like to share to maybe inspire our listeners?
I think all that inspiration is in the book. So
Okay,
if they
all
buy
right.
the book, and really it's the inspiration. I mean, for people who stutter,
Mhm.
I I I hope that they find community. I hope that they find possibilities. I hope that they challenge the stigmas of what we have been raised to think about stuttering that may not necessarily be true.
Mhm.
And for people who don't stutter, I hope I inspire you to shut up and listen.
Right, right, definitely. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure some of us quote normal folks need to listen. I mean, there are issues
Yeah,
concerned.
it's always interesting to me that we're the ones who have a communication disorder. Meanwhile, everyone else is trying to interrupt us and not
Right,
communicating very well to us. So,
right.
if we can start to change the game in how we communicate and the flexibility that we have in that, I would love to see that.
All right, cool. Okay, great words right there. Cool. Okay, then, so in closing, then, the book is Stutter Interrupted, The Comedian Who Almost Didn't Happen. The author is Nina G, and you can find her book on such websites as Amazon. So, Nina, thank you very much for being an author story. I must say, is your the interview was very revealing about this topic.
Well, thank you. And this was very early in the morning, so I hope that I gave justice to this. I think it went okay, but we'll see.
All right, cool, great. Okay, so everyone check out Stutter Interrupted, and also be sure to subscribe to our channel to check out all the great authors and books we've already covered and which we will cover in the future. So I'll see you guys next time on Author Story, where we speak to another great author about another awesome book.